Hello and welcome to 2024 New England Patriots team preview. The Drake Maye era is upon us, but how quickly will he be under center? Rhamondre Stevenson is paid. Will he be one of fantasy's cheapest workhorse running backs? And the wide receiver room is wide open and accordingly pretty affordable depending on your league type. So let's go over here. It's a great day to be great. And yeah, let's talk some Patriots. I'm your host, Ian Harditch, and joining me as he has in every single one of these team previews that you can find on the Fantasy Life YouTube page, Fantasy Life Zone Director of Analytics, Dwain The Rock McFarland. And Dwain, yes, this looks like one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL. That's just being honest. Look at the Vegas lines. They're going to tell you the same exact thing. If we have to rank them, this is going to be a consensus bottom five group. That said, we see some good fantasy players come from bad offenses, particularly when they have a bunch of volume. And it sure does seem like recently extended RB1 Rhamondre Stevenson is set for just that. I mean, just even independent of his own opportunity, we have Ezekiel Elliott leaving 235 vacated touches from a year ago. So hand up, I've drafted Antonio Gibson far more than any man should have over the past half decade or so of fantasy football. But it sure seems like Rhamondre Stevenson is in line for a true 3-down role in a year where we don't have many more running backs that are actually getting that.
Yeah, so you're not worried about Antonio Gibson at all? I think that's the one concern. Does Antonio Gibson take away some of the passing down work where Rhamondre's really been good, historically? Last year it was a little bit of a letdown with Rhamondre. I think there was an injury going on, Ian, that they weren't really leading on as being too serious because we got such a drop in efficiency. And then he started to get better, ultimately gets hurt again, gets shut down for the rest of the year. But I think Rhamondre is probably a lock to get almost all of the early down work. What Zeke is leaving, what he was already getting. The question for me is, do they try to spell him on passing downs? And sometimes teams just do this because that's the way you get a guy a little bit of time off the field. You can get him some rest. Mm-hmm. The challenge for us in fantasy land is, well, we want those targets because the targets are worth so much more than the rushing attempts, especially if you play in a PPR or a half PPR format, not so much in standard. Yeah. But with Rhamondre, it is hard to question the fact that he is going to have one of the main roles on the offense. And we've got a team that we just really don't know. Everything outside of Rhamondre kind of feels up for grabs. Who are going to be the receivers? Hunter Henry's probably the starting tight end, but who is the starting quarterback going to be? The one thing that we do know is Rhamondre Stevenson is probably dialed in and locked in to a major portion of this offense. The question, though, Ian, is also how good is this offense going to be? Are we going to get a lot of opportunities to score touchdowns? Because I do feel if Gibson takes some of the passing down work, we're going to need a step forward from the offense because Rhamondre is going to have to make it up scoring touchdowns, and that's a little bit scary.
Got there in 2022, which wasn't that long ago, RB10 in PPR points per game during that season. And again, they are at least paying him to be their fairly undisputed RB1. 4-year, $36 million extension. That's more per year than DeAndre Swift, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, James Conner, Aaron Jones. Actually only trails now Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, CMC, and Saquon Barkley in terms of total contract value at the position. Running backs kind of starting to get paid lately. Things you absolutely love to see. But Dwain, honestly, I've been clicking Stevenson a decent amount here in best ball drafts of late. And I just think for a lot of people that want to go the zero hero RB route, where again, we are trying, not even trying, almost mandating getting 4 wide receivers through the first 7 rounds. Seeing Stevenson, man, he's going usually, let's see, RB20, pick 82. That's after the top 47 or so wide receivers are gone. I mean, right next to Rhamondre is Jameson Williams, who I think is the guy that a lot of people draw their line, basically saying, I want to have 4, if not more, wide receivers at that point. So when you get there, Dwain, you're good at wide receiver, maybe you've even gotten your elite quarterback and tight end already. Who are you usually clicking on between Aaron Jones, Mondre, the Steelers running backs, Jonathan Brooks, Zamir White, among others?
This is going to sound lame, but I'm mixing them all in. I do think that the highest ceiling for at the end of the year, if you're trying to win a best ball tournament, is Jonathan Brooks and Jalen Warren. Yeah. But I'm also not naive to the fact that Rhamondre is sitting in a good spot. Zamir White is sitting in a good spot. Aaron Jones. So I really am mixing all of these guys up. And I think that's the wise play because volume, whenever we look at running backs, we know it is the most important thing. It also happens to be the most sticky thing year over year for running backs, unless you want to put, a limitation and say, hey, minimum 150 carries the year before. Then what starts to matter more? Yeah, efficiency and things like that can start to shine through a little bit more. But I think all of these guys are similar, but they all have potential pitfalls. They all could potentially not get the workload that we're expecting. Rhamondre getting paid makes me feel a little bit better about that, Ian, but I am worried about the passing down work. So just been mixing them together. But to your point, I think the big takeaway is I love taking Rhamondre Stevenson where he goes, just like I like taking some of those other guys. Think 3 years ago, just go back 3 years in fantasy land. What round would Rhamondre Stevenson be going in? You're getting him in round 7 right now, or round 8.
Yeah.
Where you're getting him around 7 or 8. That's around that 7-8 turn. Where would he be going 3 years ago in fantasy drafts?
Round 3 or 4. We'd be screaming dead zone, but now the dead zone's at round 8.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it's a great pick in that range, but I am mixing all those guys up.
We'll note that new offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt comes from Cleveland, where, again, obviously had a great running back in Nick Chubb, but they never exactly gave him that featured RB1 workload. That said, Browns RBs were 8th in expected PPR points per game last year, so hopefully we get more of that in New England. On Gibson, Dwayne, I can't stop drafting the guy. It's a problem. All right. But you know what? Lord hates a quitter, and I'm not going to quit doing it. So I actually have drafted more of Gibson than Rhamondre, which is easier because he's so much cheaper. But man, we heard it from the Patriots beat when the initial deal happened, which wasn't insignificant, man. Nice double negative, idiot. But 3 years, 11 million, with Gibson. And yes, I know he disappointed over the years, but at this point, we're not drafting him to be an RB1. He's just a pure handcuff play, and going outside the top 50 running backs in fantasy football. Look, I'm not saying Gibson's the world's best running back, but we've seen him total 1,000+ yards. We've seen him be a great pass catcher. Dwayne, if Rhamondre Stevenson goes down, man, I think there's a chance Gibson has the sort of volume to be a plug and play upside RB2.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody else there. I mean, it's hard for us. We can't go overboard anymore on Gibson just because it's never happened. But they saw enough in him that they gave him, a decent contract for what running backs are getting today. And again, I think there is a potential path to Gibson having spike week value, even in a split timeshare with Rhamondre. But if something happens to Rhamondre, looking at this current depth chart, I do feel like Gibson would be in a really good spot, at least for touches. Again, we have a lot of questions about this offense, but volume for the price that you're getting Gibson at, I do like it.
Top 50 running backs, top 20 quarterbacks, top 18 tight ends regularly off the board before you get to Gibson. I don't hate, all the running backs in that range by any stretch. I think Chuba's in a similar situation. We talked about Ray Davis in the Bills preview. Tyler Allgeier's a decent handcuff option there as well. So again, Antonio Gibson, cheaper than ever. Don't be fully penalizing him just because of what was going down in Washington, when a good running back in his own right, Brian Robinson, and even J.D. McKissick were the primary reasons why, my family's been through enough. I got to stop talking about Antonio Gibson. All right.
Feels like a therapy session. You just trying to get this all off your chest.
You know what? Screw the rest of this rundown. Let's keep going on to Gibson. Okay. Anyway, Jalen Polk, Dwayne, the late round wide receiver of 2024. People are wondering, obviously a wide open room right now. Pop Douglas, the reigning wide receiver 1, although that came pretty much because Kendrick Bourne suffered that torn ACL. That said, Bourne, 3-year, $33 million extension. Conveniently, coincidentally, the exact same year and dollar amount that the Patriots gave Devontae Parker an extension and signed Juju Smith-Schuster. So just great, I guess. Great's one word for it. Cap management there by the Patriots. But yeah, man, I like what I saw from Polk, out of Washington. Watching him, I comped him to a Gen Z Robert Woods. How confident are you, Dwayne, that Polk can rise to the top of what is, again, a pretty wide open passing attack?
Look, I mean, Polk wasn't like an elite prospect coming out. Obviously, he goes in the second round here to the Patriots, but he played in a really good program. Well, he started off at Texas Tech, then he ends up moving over to Washington, where he plays with Rome Odunze, who obviously everybody knows goes in the top 10 picks of the NFL draft. But you also had Jalen McMillan, who went in this draft. Was it round 3 or 4? Round 3, I think. It might have been round 4. But looking at Jalen Polk, yeah, so he had plenty of target competition, and he was still good. And so the supermodel liked him, didn't love him. But I will say he's one of these use cases where even though we adjust for team target competition based on where those players eventually get drafted and their target shares in college, it still might be underestimating Jalen Polk. And I love the comp here to Robert Woods. I think that's a really good one whenever you watch the guy play. And I can't stop drafting him, Ian. Like right now, if you look at my best ball drafts, my portfolio, my third most drafted wide receiver is Jalen Polk at 20%. Now he's slowly been climbing in cost. Early on, it was just like, okay,
yeah,
if you just pure and simple, forget supermodel, forget anything. Just this dude went in round 2, and look how far after he's going other guys that went at the beginning of round 2, and he still is. Like you're still getting Polk how many picks after you're getting Jalen Polk, like almost 30 picks after you see not McCaffrey. Golly, why's my mind going blank? LA Chargers slot was a
McConkey.
Play McConkey.
Yeah.
Why's my mind going blank? I'm an idiot. Right. Keon Coleman, who was an early first round pick, also going over 30 picks ahead of Jalen Polk. So just from that standpoint, and when I say 30 picks ahead, 30 wide receivers ahead. Jeez. So more than 30 picks ahead. We're talking 5 or 6 rounds. So just from that standpoint alone, like you've got to be drafting Jalen Polk. But then you look at the wide open offense here. We don't really know who is going to be the top wide receiver, so it could very easily be Jalen Polk. So I'm definitely down with it, Ian. I've only drafted Deontay Johnson at 28% and Rome Odunze at 21% more than Jalen Polk, who I have at 19.8%.
Earlier in the offseason, I just took your target projections and applied them to wide receivers. And now Polk is going pick 142. But before that, he was outside the top 150. And he and Demario Douglas were the only wide receivers projecting to see north of 90 targets, priced outside the top 150 overall selections over at Underdog Fantasy. So, yeah, man, this is the single cheapest quarterback, wide receiver 1, 2, 3 stack in all of fantasy football right now. Average pick ADP of 179. I mean, I have been in drafts where you get sniped, shit happens, you don't have your quarterback 2 stack going on, and honestly with this week 17 stuff we got going on, Patriots Chargers shapes out to be the single cheapest game stack that you can get going. So beyond Polk, is there anyone else you're targeting? Because I know everyone loves Dontavian Wicks, and for good reason, but Wicks along with Douglas really did pop last year as the 2 rookie wide receivers who maybe didn't have the counting numbers we wanted, but did have some of the underlying metrics that we like to see out of year 1 players.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking all wide receivers or other guys on the Patriots that I like?
Just Patriots, but
yeah, like Javon Baker, taking him at the end. He had some issues, that went on through his career that pushed him down draft boards. But I mean, Ian, you're a film grinder. When you watch Javon Baker, it's really hard to not like him. Like, I mean, this guy, he plays with an attitude, he plays with an edge. So if you're looking for someone that could surprise, I think it's definitely Javon Baker, who you can get typically around 17 or 18 of your draft. And again, this room is wide open. The other one is Kendrick Bourne. Might struggle a little bit out of the gate, coming off the ACL injury around mid-season last year, but they did bring him back. He's the guy that I think they could use more underneath, let him be the yak guy. That's kind of a role that he had developed over the last couple of years for the Patriots. Now, we've got a new coaching staff here, so things are going to be changing up a little bit. But again, they paid him, they brought him back. So again, that's only for very deep leagues. In your home league, you care less about Kendrick Bourne, right? It's right. Jalen Polk, and then Javon Baker, you're probably not drafting either. Those are guys that you're just kind of waiting on, checking out the waiver wire. We'll talk about tight end here in a second, but I mean, Hunter Henry's obviously another name that we would look at.
And guys, it all really depends on what happens under center between Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett. Because again, we said some really good things about these players, okay? But if you want to go through all 32 teams and try to rank the skill position groups, they're going to be bottom 5. But guess what? We would have said the same thing about the Houston Texans last year, and look what happened there. Now, also would have said it about the Carolina Panthers, and look what happened there. So not trying to say the Patriots are going to be, this year's version of the Texans, but some of the parallels, Dwain, do make a little bit of sense, particularly given how cheap everyone involved is. I mean, Drake Maye is someone that we saw be the consensus, QB2 in this class, really throughout his entire collegiate career, only behind Caleb Williams, until everyone just starts overthinking things come January, February, March. So I understand Jaden Daniels ended up going ahead of him, but man, we're talking about PFF's highest graded passer among 89 qualified Power 5 quarterbacks from 2021 to 2023. And unlike Stroud, May, we actually have a rushing floor. In terms of over these last 2 seasons, man, Jaden Daniels had 13.8 fantasy points per game from rushing. Drake Maye had 9.4. Anthony Richardson was at 10, bro. Justin Fields was about a 10. Kyler Murray was about a 10. I think they're all better rushers than Drake Maye, but we have a guy who hopefully will be under center sooner rather than later. Shout out to Jacoby Brissett, but he does scramble. He does have signs of being a pretty damn good passer. Can he elevate everyone else in this offense? How are you feeling about some round 18 Drake Maye, Dwain?
Can he elevate everyone in his rookie season? I don't know, but I think that he's definitely got the attributes that we're looking for to score fantasy points as a late round pick. You talked about the first part of it, which is his ability as a rusher. He handled 11% of the Tar Heels design rushing attempts during the games that he played. That was number 2 behind only Jaden Daniels in this class. And then, sorry, that was his scramble rate was 11%. And then you look at his design rushing attempts, 14%, also second behind Jaden Daniels. So if you're looking for someone that can give you he's not Jaden Daniels, but level down, someone that can give you something on the ground, I do think that it is Drake Maye. And then if you look at the guy that probably honestly in the class possesses the most just pure upside as a passer, if everything goes right, I think you still make an argument that it is Drake Maye.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude, like, getting the ball down the field, can hit all the throws. He's battled some inconsistencies. He's a guy that I know some people think may take some time, and that's kind of been what's been again echoed out of mini camps and training camp, although that's been not training camp, but mini camps and OTAs. Now that started to change towards the end. It started to sound like he actually might be starting to perform better than Jacoby Brissett. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. But this guy's going to be on the field by the end of the season. So if you're playing best ball, I really like Drake Maye as a late round pick. If you're playing in a redraft league, he's somebody that you're just going to leave probably on your waiver wire, but you'll want to watch it closely. As soon as you hear that he's a starter, if you're having problems at quarterback just because of that rushing upside that he possesses, that could surprise people. And for whatever period he's in, we could be ranking him closer to a QB1 than not.
Removing sacks from the equation, 57 rushing yards per game for Maye, Anthony Richardson 59, and Justin Fields 55. So not saying he's those guys, but again, not everything.
Anything drive you more nuts hardest than having to back out sack yardage for rushing yards for college
so
quarterback?
Why do they do that?
Piss out of me. I don't know
why do they do that.
Oh,
it's so annoying. But yeah, man, I think there's some underrated upside here. And again, I think it's just the Patriots, but like, Jaden Daniels is going as a top 12 quarterback. I'll take the Washington offense ahead of the Patriots, but like, I don't think it's night and day. We're probably not ranking Washington as his top 10 supporting cast. And again, a lot of the numbers tell us that Drake, even if he's 90% of Jaden Daniels, man, as a kind of rusher, which may be a bit optimistic there, but again.
Yeah, I'd go like 70%, but still, it's enough to be a factor in fantasy.
Last round quarterback is available with, again, I think a semblance of upside. Really got to take a long look at that. Fun fact, Drake Maye's mom and dad were both All-State in high school. I don't know if you guys remember the old Madden superstar modes where you'd have to like shuffle through your parents, but that's an ideal starter pack, Dwain. So we got that going for us as well. Just depends on how quickly he can get Jacoby Brissett out of there.
I think I might prefer Maye over McCarthy, like the more McCarthy has the better weapons for sure.
Yeah.
But McCarthy he did not run the football in college. And so it's kind of a trade-off, like the upside ceiling of a Minnesota offense, if somehow JJ McCarthy can untap it. But I really do feel like Maye is a clear tier above JJ McCarthy as a prospect. And that's what matters most to me at the quarterback position. So that's what I've been thinking more and more about. And I've been much more willing to click on Maye than McCarthy.
Dynasty, 100%. I think this year specifically, you can make a bit more of an argument for McCarthy, but honestly, there's a chance that both these guys do start the season on the bench. That is the word out of minicamp that Jacoby is a starter for now. And I want to give him a little bit of respect, man. Limited action, but over these past 2 years, third best completion percentage over expected, 8th best EPA per dropback. Bro, last year, he went 18 for 23, 224 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 5 drives where they were behind in games at the end of the year, and he led a touchdown drive on every single occasion. Look, we're not drafting Jacoby, Dwain, but like over under 12 starts for Drake Maye this year.
Oh, I think he's over. Because what are we? We're about to get to the win total.
Yeah.
It's not good, guys. Unless you think that the Patriots are, and I do think they're improved, but so is the rest of the division outside of Buffalo, maybe coming down a slight bit. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't think that they're going to be winning enough games for them to keep Jacoby Brissett on the field.
Well, obviously, the guy orchestrating this, regardless of who ends up being under center, is the aforementioned new OC from Cleveland, Alex Van Pelt. So, Dwain, it's a little tough with this because when we do have Kevin Stefanski mostly running that offense, in Cleveland, tough to overly know how much the OC actually has to do with it. But when he was there, man, this was one of the league's most run-heavy offenses. And again, just based on kind of what this team wants to be, probably leaning towards defense, run-first philosophy under Jared Mayo. What's your overall expectation here from, how much of a fantasy-friendly pass-first offense the 2024 Patriots will be?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns were 0.3% drop back rate over expected, which ranks 15th in the league. So basically,
that's just
average.
Last year, right?
Yeah, for last year, for the Browns. So when you look at Jared Mayo, the things that he said, he's a former defensive player. He's a defensive-minded coach. I think they are going to want to come out and play smash mouth football. I think they want to run the football. I think you're going to see a lot of play action, which could fare well for a guy like Drake Maye, because then he can boot out off of that. He could take off on a scramble, or he could buy time, hit the deep crosser down the field. We know that he's got the arm to do it. So I think that's another reason to think that Drake Maye potentially gets on the field sooner rather than later, because I feel like they're going to try to manage the game through the run game, but they're going to want to hit the big plays when they do pass. Now, they're not going to want to turn the ball over. That's what probably leans things to Jacoby Brissett. But once all things are going and they've lost 5 or 6 games, and they've won 1 or 2, like, I just don't see Drake Maye not getting on the field. And I think there are some nice things. Again, to your point, we don't know for sure what the Van Pelt offense is going to look like coming off of his time in Cleveland, because Stefanski was calling plays. But overall, the underarching things that you see about that profile line up with what you would think Jared Mayo would want and what he's been telling us through minicamp and through OTAs. So I think we're going to see more of a run balanced offense, and they're going to try to make their hay in the passing game through the big plays, play action, pushing things down the field.
Obviously, Cleveland offensive line, even the running backs had a big reason for that philosophy, but could maybe be the case in New England as well. Just PFF's 20th ranked rating offensive line, but they do return 4 of 5 starters. Continuity can be a hell of a drug across the,
Hey, real quick on this one, Ian. Yeah. So when you think about this offense, and I'm just kind of thinking about this as we're talking it through, that's the case for Javon Baker. Like, if you're looking at this passing offense, and we like Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas, you talked about really the profile of what we have with Polk, and I agree with you. It's more of a possession guy, Robert Woods working the intermediate areas. But if this offense does somehow go off, like, I would see it being Drake Maye and Javon Baker somehow, like, just creating magic, because Javon Baker's the guy that's the most different from everyone else they have on the team. He's the guy that can push the vertical boundary. He's the guy that can win the contested catches down the field. Not that Polk can't do any of those things, but if I had to pick between the two, I think that Javon Baker is more likely to be that guy.
Wow, shots fired at Tyquan Thornton, Dwain. Never thought I would.
I've been firing shots at Tyquan Thornton since he was drafted. So.
No, I'm with you. We also have KJ Osborne there. I forgot about that.
Don't care.
Jalen Reagor. Apparently,
oh my God, you just mentioned Jalen Reagor out loud.
Juju Smith-Schuster still alive, hilariously 7th on the our lads depth chart. Man, hopefully his knee doesn't explode like we heard about last year. So,
but again, another guy that
I'm with you.
If he does play underneath. Intermediate target guy, who's the guy that can push that boundary and help them. And if they're trying to make the big plays, less passing plays, but when they make them, they want to kind of more like what Russell Wilson used to do with the Seahawks. Then I think it's Javon Baker that ends up having a great season if things do click and we suddenly look up with the Patriots. We're like at the end of the year, oh my God, like, look at this offense. I could see it being those two guys making magic.
Hey guys, look at the wide receivers going inside the top 140 picks. And it's pretty rare to find, again, the possibility for someone to be starting with an upside quarterback, which, hey, number 3 overall pick, Drake Maye, I think qualifies under center. Baker, obviously Polk, Douglas. And hey, even if, feeling a little bit drunk one of these days, even our guy Kendrick Bourne very late also apply. All right, guys, before we keep going, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at DraftKings. You can actually go to DraftKings, bet $5 on anything, whether that's UFC Fight Night here coming up, just daily MLB goodness, or, any other of the sports that they happen to offer. $5 on anything, you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. All you got to do is use code FANTASYLIFE. So I know, long time still to go before we get football back on our screens, but what better way to bring in the eating than maybe doing a little bit of a parlay action on MLB, or better yet, get in those best ball streets. Really appreciate DraftKings having contests ranging from as low as $3 to up to $20, where you can go ahead and try your chance to win that milli. So again, great stuff over at DraftKings Sportsbook. $5 to get $150 back in bonus bets. Again, just use that code FANTASYLIFE, code FANTASYLIFE, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. All right, Dwain, usually here, we have position battles, but in the Patriots case, it's almost like just their entire offense. So I think we're pretty good on that one, but there is a potential sleeper out here, and his name is Hunter Henry. 3-year, $27 million extension, includes $15.8 million guaranteed. Look, Hunter Henry, good football player. I think we can all agree that he's, flirted with some tight end one goodness in that 2021 season where the Patriots weren't half bad. How concerned are you, though, that we have Alex Van Pelt coming from Cleveland, who, also had a highly paid tight end in Austin Hooper, who's now on this team, and he still refused to actually give Hooper that full-time role, regularly rotating Hooper, David Njoku, and even Harrison Bryant over the years. Because that's my concern with Hunter Henry. It's just like, okay, he's getting paid as a tight end one, but they bring in Hooper. How far can legit 65 or 70 targets go for Henry? Or do you think he has a higher target ceiling than that?
I think he has a higher target ceiling than that. I think the thing that helps a guy like Hunter Henry is we know that he can play on all the downs, right? He can come out there and handle the run blocking duties as well. That's often what creates that rotation. And honestly, Austin Hooper's not a guy that they've wanted to trust a lot, pretty much on any offense he's been on, playing that full-time role. He's seen it a couple of times, but not someone that they want out there on rundown. So I think that Hunter Henry is squarely the tight end one on this team. The question just is, does he have any chance of becoming a tight end one in fantasy land? And I think it's certainly a possibility. If you look at his target earning ability, you look at his historical fantasy points per game, look at his yards per route run, there's kind of a mixed bag there, but some of the underlying data points point towards a low end tight end one. He's obviously had some of those finishes before. He's not that great with the ball, in his hands, but he can catch touchdowns. And if you look at this offense, like, would it surprise us if, this team probably wouldn't project him for more than like 21, 22 passing touchdowns, but could he catch like 6 or 7 of those? Yeah, I could certainly see Hunter Henry doing that. And I think there is a path where he actually is the top passing target on this offense. If Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, let's face it, they're not first round picks. If they both flop, and we've got aging Juju Smith-Schuster, we've got Kendrick Bourne coming off an injury, there's a lot of paths here to the running backs and tight ends getting a lot of extra targets in the offense. And if that happened, I think Hunter Henry has the most to gain.
Hunter Henry or his ADP neighbor, Luke Musgrave?
I'm going Hunter Henry.
Wow.
Right,
and I Tucker Kraft having the peck issue?
Well, but I think Tucker Kraft's going to be fine by the time it matters most for fantasy football championships, right?
Yes, that's true.
So will it be early in the season? I don't know. We'll have to pay attention to what's happening with Tucker Kraft. But once Luke Musgrave came back finally last year after Tucker Kraft had taken over a role, we saw a rotation between those two guys. So I'm going to lean towards Hunter Henry. I'd certainly like taking some Luke Musgrave. If you're just going pure upside, just go with the young player. It's fine. But I think there's probably some hidden upside people are ignoring here with Hunter Henry.
Henry's pick 161, and I've just made it a mission of mine not to try to overly shit on any player going outside the top 150 because they're going outside the freaking top 150, okay? But I will say we're not building Patriots or Chargers stack, and I guess we're going to start saying these 2 late-round tight ends every show, but I do prefer Noah Fant and Jonnu Smith at cost to Henry. They're our favorite 2 late-round tight ends.
I think Henry has a better floor than either one of those guys. I think either one of those guys, if things work out perfectly and they get the additional playing time we would hope for, which we haven't seen for them in their careers, then I think you're going to like them. But Hunter Henry doesn't have near the target competition and is a better lock to be close to 75, 80% route participation than either one of those guys. So I think ADP is correct on it, but I don't disagree with like what you just said. If I'm swinging more for the pure upside, I like the 2 guys you named, but if I'm looking for the floor, knowing that there's also some sneaky upside, it just feels weird saying upside about an old slow dude. But he has it. He really does, based on where he's where he's going right now in drafts.
And I will say, just out of those, again, kind of tight end 18 to tight end 25 group, I think Henry has a pretty good case for the 3rd guy that I would be targeting out there. So again, not someone to base your entire draft strategy around, but Henry.
I've drafted all 3 of those guys on the same team before when I waited at tight end.
That is insane, Dwain. What? I see where you're going from there. If we see Hunter Henry, week 1, just all of a sudden 85% route rate and Drake Maye or Jacoby Brissett impressing a little bit, could be on the cover of some of those week 2 waiver wire articles before you know it. So as we wind things down here, we will conclude as we always do, which is comparing the 2024 Patriots to a TV or movie character. Dwain, I'm going to go with 0 from Holes. This is a team that is just at a complete loss for a personality in the post TB12 Belichick era, and I don't know if they're even getting it back quite yet. So Drake Maye, new era for sure, but bringing back Jacoby, promoting Jared Mayo, this still just looks a hell of a lot like, the post TB12 Belichick Patriots teams who haven't been very good, but hey man, maybe just maybe they can get over that win total, which I realize now we forgot to do. So I am taking over 5.5 wins for this Patriots team. It is tied for the 2nd lowest number in the entire league, but I just think it's a solid enough defense. And again, getting that last place schedule, This team was complete crap last year, and they still eked out 4 wins. God forbid the number 3 overall pick is actually pretty good at football, and the top 10 defense does their thing. I do think the Patriots can eke out 6 or 7 wins. So hit me with the TV movie character, Dwain, and then over under 5.5 wins.
Yeah, I'll just give you the over under. I'm going to go under. I like what I think Drake Maye could end up showing signs for the future, but man, there's just a lot of questions on this roster and how they're going to score points. So I think it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be an uphill battle for them to win over 5.5 games. Now, looking at the movie idea, like I was really struggling with this one. But I would go with Succession, and mainly just because of the title, because it's like,
true.
Brady already left. We know that. And now Belichick's gone as well. So what's the plan? Like, how is this going to shake out? I don't want to call Jared Mayo like, some of the snotty kids, on Succession. I mean, there was pretty, oh God, is he Wozgam? I don't know. I should have thought more about this one because this is a really good show. So I should have really had a really good team to use for this. But it's just, I feel like there's a lot of risk here. We already lost Brady. Now you lose Belichick, and it could be a complete fold up this season. Now, I think the future could be bright based on Drake Maye, but this year I think it's going to be tough with all the leadership gone, out of the building. I think Jared Mayo is going to be fine. Like, I've been impressed with everything that I've read and heard from him. So it's definitely not trying to shit on Jared Mayo, who I used to love as an IDP player back in the day, Ian. So but I'll go with Succession.
I love your random IDP tidbits we get every couple of shows. I'm just
happy.
I
don't know where those even come from. They just pop in my head.
I'm just happy you didn't comp Jared Mayo to Greg. That really would have been a funny one. And honestly, just based on the come up, man, could have maybe done something with that. But that's going to conclude this edition of the Fantasy Life podcast. I want to invite you guys to go to fantasylife.com to check out all the written team previews I've been grinding over the past couple months, as well as Dwain's projections and our Fantasy Life Consensus Ranks. Talk about a great day to be great. Hell, there's even a free newsletter where you can subscribe to. That'll be in your inbox each and every morning with some goodness to hopefully help you in the fantasy streets. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in to the Fantasy Life podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.